Chapter 15. A few weeks later. "So you've got a job now," Chris said to him. "Yeah," Ken replied, sipping on his coffee as the four of them sat at the table in the cafe. "I was very lucky to find it, actually." "Where is it, then?" Neil asked him. "Tell us." Ken grinned at him. He glanced towards the waitress as she approached their table, smiling as she took their empty cups, placing them on the small round tray she carried. She was a pretty young thing, slender, with long brown hair tied into a plait and held by a large pink ribbon. She looked very smart in her white dress and black apron the female staff here wore. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" She smiled sweetly at them. "No, thank you," Ken said to her. "We're fine." She paused then, eyes lingering on him, before moving away. Anthony leaned forward in his chair to get a better look at her as she moved away, turning back to Ken once she had gone. "You've got a job here," he said. "Yeah," Ken smiled shyly, looking away. "It's a good place to work as far as I understand. Everyone here is really nice, but I haven't started work yet." "Wow," Anthony said, glancing back to the waitress that had served them. "What a hottie. Maybe I should get a job here too." "Her name is Tess," Ken said. "She'll be showing me tomorrow how everything works." "As long as it doesn't affect your studying," Neil said to him. "Remember, the exams are coming up." "Yeah," Ken grumbled. "Don't remind me." "Why did you get a job anyway?" Chris asked him. "Well," Ken began, "I don't live at home anymore. I live with Mustang." Chris said. "That must be awkward. You know what he is, right? He hasn't tried anything funny with you, has he?" "I know," Ken smiled. "And no, he hasn't. He's a bit of a pain sometimes, and a bit strange. But he's good to me, and he gives me space. But I can't depend on him forever. I don't live at home anymore. I need to learn to care for myself. Then I can move out and get a place of my own." "That would be so cool," Anthony sighed. "My girlfriend and I are nearly ready to get a place of our own. She's sick of her family. And to be honest, I can't blame her." "They don't like you, do they?" Chris said, turning to him, the conversation shifting. "They're a bunch of crazies," Anthony said dramatically. "You know, I swear that one day they went through the messages on my phone." Ken sat back with a smile, listening to Anthony talk. As he did, his attention wandered, and he caught the attention of Tess again, who was by the tills now, serving a customer. She smiled to him briefly before turning away again. Ken felt a flutter in his heart. He looked away briefly before glancing back towards her. "So who is she?" "What?" Ken fumbled. He hadn't expected to be interrogated the instant he walked through the door to Mustang's apartment. "You know," Mustang smirked, leaning on his shoulder uncomfortably. "That girl, in the coffee shop." Ken glowered at him, pushing him off his shoulder and turning to him. "How do you know about that? Have you been watching me?" "As a matter of fact," Mustang smirked, "I have." "But why?" "I already said to you before," he sighed. "It's because I love you." Ken groaned, gritting his teeth and walking away. "I'm hungry," Ken said. "I'm going to make something to eat." Mustang watched him walk away, still hanging by the door left open. Mustang reached for the handle, closing the door slowly before walking down the hall and towards the kitchen. He stood in the doorway, watching Ken shuffle about the kitchen in a bored manner, taking out a pan from the cupboard and several things from the fridge. Mustang hung in the doorway, watching Ken from a distance, just standing there. "I start work tomorrow," Ken said absent-mindedly. "I'll be able to earn money and pay for my own food. Thank you," he added hastily at that, "for everything. You've really helped me out." Ken paused then, casting a glance towards Mustang. Ken began. "Don't know where I'd be without you." Mustang raised his head at this. A strange expression crossed his face. "Ken." "What?" They stared at each other. Mustang turned his head away. "Nothing," he grumbled. Ken straightened, frowning as Mustang suddenly walked away without explanation. Ken arrived at work early, greeted by Tess, who bounded happily up to him. "Hey," she beamed. "You're here." "Of course I'm here," Ken laughed awkwardly at her, feeling nervous on his first day. "I work here, remember?" Ken put the few belongings he carried with him in his locker, before putting on his apron to start his shift. It was busy, and Ken kept his mind on his task, working quickly. Throughout the entire shift, Tess kept close to him, guiding him, giving him instructions and helping him when he needed help. Ken began to feel a little more at ease as time went by. more so with Tess by his side, watching over him. Several hours passed, and everything was going well. "Here," Tess beamed at him, passing him a cup of coffee. "Give this to the gentleman on table 12. "Sure," Ken nodded, taking it from her. "I'll be right back." He carried the coffee over to the table. Ken froze suddenly, his brow twitching in annoyance as he saw who sat at the table. "Hey," Mustang waved at him. "Mustang?" Ken put the coffee down before him. "What are you doing here?" "I was just checking on you," Mustang gleamed happily. "I care about you. I just wanted to see how you were doing." "I'm fine," Ken said flatly. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Mustang hesitated for only a moment before answering. "No," he said at last. "I'm fine." He lifted the cup to his lips, sipping it carefully and not taking his eyes from Ken as he did so. "Well," Ken answered curtly, "I'll see you at home then." Ken walked away, but he could still feel Mustang's gaze boring into the back of his skull. He knew now that Mustang would stay for ages, just watching him. So annoying, Ken thought, gritting his teeth and trying hard not to notice. A few hours later, when Ken's shift was drawing to a close, he went back to the small kitchen to wash the cups. "So is this your first job then?" Tess asked him as she skipped happily up to him. There were fewer customers, and the place was quieter now. "Actually, yeah," Ken said to her. "It is." "I see," she grinned at him. "You're doing really well." "You think so?" he said hopefully. "Of course," she beamed at him. He couldn't help it, but he smiled in turn. There was something about her joyous mood that was contagious. Simply being around her made him happy. "She's so pretty," Ken thought as he stared at her. "And she's always smiling." Tess noticed his prolonged stare. She was grinning at him slyly, leaning against the counter. "What is it?" she giggled. Ken's heart skipped a beat, and he looked away sharply. "It's nothing," he said hastily. "So what time does your shift finish?" Ken's attention drifted back to her face as she answered his question in great detail, beginning to ramble on about other things as well. And then his attention drifted past her, through the open door to the kitchen, and out into the cafe itself, where the guests sat. Then his mood soured as he saw Mustang sitting at the table by the window, still there, still watching him with a fixed expression, and never looking away. "Stupid Mustang," Ken glowered as Tess continued to talk. "What's his problem?" It was late by the time Ken's shift finished. He and Tess were the only ones working now, and she helped him close down the coffee shop. "Gosh, is that the time?" she sighed, brushing back her fringe and glancing to the clock. "I didn't realize it was so late." "The time sure has flown," Ken said. "I guess it's true when you have fun," she beamed, turning to him. "You had fun?" he asked. "Sure," she smiled. "Didn't you?" He smiled back at her. "Yeah," he said awkwardly. "I guess I did." "So are you going home now?" "Yeah." "Where do you live?" she asked him. "With," Ken began. In an apartment," he finished. "It's not far from here." "Then can I walk you home?" she asked. Ken chuckled at her. "I'm the one who's supposed to offer to walk you home. Isn't that what a gentleman does?" "I want to see where you live." "Okay." Ken frowned at her in amusement. "Then let's go." Tess laughed happily, taking him by the arm. "Come on, it's beautiful outside." They sauntered out the shop, Tess pausing at the door to turn the sign so that it read closed, locking the shop before walking arm in arm with Ken through the quiet and still streets. All around them the lights gave out a gentle glow, bulbs hanging on strings over their heads, greens and yellows and blues. "The town is holding a festival tomorrow," Tess said as they walked beneath the lights. "It's going to be so beautiful and so much fun," she giggled joyfully. "I don't think I've ever met anyone so happy all the time," Ken said, turning to her with a smile. "It's quite contagious." "Well, why wouldn't I be happy?" she said, eyes glinting at him. "Life is wonderful, after all." As they went, the two passed a hooded figure, silent and leaning back against one of the lampposts, with his hands in his pockets. They paid him no attention. Tess let go of Ken then, running forward towards the fountain before them, twirling as she went, arms out wide and laughing. Ken smiled as he watched her. "The night is so beautiful," she cried, reaching up towards the moon as if wanting to take it in her arms. "So beautiful and cold," she shivered then, hugging herself. "Here," Ken said, offering his coat to her. "Thank you," she said shyly, taking it from him and blushing slightly. "You're such a gentleman." The hooded figure leaning against the post straightened then, turning and walking away. "I don't want to go home yet," Tess said to him. "Can't we stay out here for a while?" "Of course we can. Your family won't mind, will they?" Ken hesitated then. The truth is, He turned away. I'm sorry, Tess said, expression dampening. Did I say something wrong? My family, Ken began, turning back to her. They kicked me out. I don't see them anymore. That's awful, Tess sighed, looking genuinely distressed to hear this. How could they? Why? It was because of something I said to them. So, where do you live now? With a friend, Ken said casually. His name is Mustang. Mustang, Tess giggled. That's a funny name. Yeah, Ken smiled. It is. Mustang walked away from them, drawing his hands out of his pocket and lowering his hood only when he was out of sight. There you are, came a silky voice. What is it, Troy? Mustang grumbled as he went, not slowing down for the figure that had appeared. Troy jogged up beside him, then matched his pace as they walked. Are those two little birds bothering you? Troy teased. Is that Ken? Troy interrogated, glancing back at him as he talked with Tess. Is he the reason you haven't been hanging out in ages? Oh, come on. Troy grabbed him around the waist roughly, turning him towards him. He looks like he doesn't want you. Look how happy he is with her. Mustang couldn't help casting one last glance towards the couple. It's true, he mumbled regretfully. They do look happy. See? Troy smirked, holding him tighter. He doesn't want you. Come on. You used to be so much fun. Mustang flinched then as Troy moved closer to him, running his tongue across his shoulder. Troy, he uttered. Troy grabbed Mustang by the chin then, turning his head sharply towards his, kissing him forcefully. But Mustang couldn't turn his eyes away from Ken and Tess. Troy broke away from him, following Mustang's gaze, but by that time they were gone. He turned his attention back to Mustang, pushing him gently backwards until the back of Mustang's legs touched the raised flower bed. He leant back, resting against the soil as Troy leaned over him. Mustang tilted his head back, a single tear running from his eye, as Troy trailed kisses down his body, caressing him, tasting him. Troy straightened then. Why don't we take this back to my place? Mustang did not object. He allowed Troy to pull him from the flower bed, walking with him and away. So that's why you live with Mustang now? Yeah, Ken mumbled. I'm grateful for everything he's done for me, but I want to set out on my own path now. I want to live on my own and look after myself. It makes sense, Tess claims. That's why you got this job. Yeah, Ken said. It is. The next day was completely normal. Ken went to his lectures, hung out with his friends. Then, when he had finished his last lecture, he left the college alone. Ken decided to take the scenic route home, making the most of the beautiful day around him. The town was pleasant, and it was quiet at this time. Most people were at work or school. The streets were mostly empty. Even the roads were silent. Ken drew a deep breath, sighing heavily in contentment. I love this town. He wandered from the path, moving to the back of the shops in the shopping center and to the park, leaping over a broken fence to the more wooded area where it was completely deserted. The pine needles crunched beneath his feet as he went. He came back to the open road, sauntering down the street and whistling to himself as he went. He slowed then, glancing to the graveyard beside him, where he recognized a figure sitting beneath the trees. Ken changed course, entering the graveyard through the gate and approaching the figure. Mustang glanced around, hearing the sound of someone approaching. You're here again, Ken asked him. What are you doing? What was I doing? Mustang echoed, rising to his feet and dusting himself off. I was praying. Praying? Yeah, Mustang said innocently. You know, when you talk to God. I didn't think you the type. Well, Mustang smirked knowingly. There's a lot you don't know about me. I still love you, by the way, he added hastily. Yeah, Ken replied in a bored tone, turning to walk away again. Ken? He paused, glancing back. What? Mustang approached him. Ken tensed as Mustang reached for him, hand going to his head. You've got a leaf in your hair, Mustang told him, pulling the leaf free and letting it fall. Thanks, Ken replied flatly. I saw you with that young woman last night. A flicker of annoyance crossed Ken's brow. Have you been following me? No. It's obvious, Ken barked, pointing an accusing finger at him. It's obvious that you have. It is obvious, Mustang replied flatly. I'm jealous. The two stared at each other. Ken scowled at him, turning on his heel and marching away. I'm going home.